are you? If everyone would please sit down. It is 8:31 a.m. on this gorgeous summer day, November the 16th, 2021.
That's about right.
And we will call the meeting to order, and as usual, we will start with our chaplain prayer and pledges. Pastor Dawkins, would you please come forward and lead us in both?
Good morning. Let us pray. Father, thank you for the opportunity to invoke your word through prayer into this meeting. I pray for those that are in authority in the city, and I pray and I lift up the mayor, her staff and assistants, the city council members, the city manager, and every person and department that is instrumental in leading and directing our city. I pray that you would bless them to work together today in unity to tackle the agendas, the items that are on the agenda today. May you keep division and hidden agendas among them. I pray that you would give them godly wisdom, direction, and instructions on how to best lead and manage our city. Lord, your word declares that we should acknowledge you in all of our ways, and you would direct our paths. You said that if we delight ourselves in you, you would give us the desires of our heart. So we ask your blessings on these people who have been called to lead our community in which we live, work, and play. Lastly, I ask that you would come together and be in this room and cause them to have a productive meeting. Lead each and every one of them so that they can make fruitful contributions to this at this time. Enable them to think and strategize in ways that will achieve great results. And I pray that you would purify their hearts and motives so that each one of them will enter into this meeting desiring the good of others and the pleasure of your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let us pledge to the allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under the Texas flag, I
Pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
one state, under God, and indivisible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two proclamations today, and we will start with the first one, which is an American Recycles Day. So I know there's people in the audience that are here for that, so if you would please come forward, I appreciate it. America Recycles Day is held on November, I'll talk slower. You can come around back here. America Recycles Day is held on November 15th and is the only nationally recognized time dedicated to promoting and celebrating recycling in the United States. Also known as National Recycling Day, the initiative began with Texas roots after two employees of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality created Texas Recycles Day in 1994 and later presented the concept to the National Recycling Coalition. The first America Recycles Day was officially held on November 15, 1997, and had at least 40 states participating. The average Texan throws out approximately 7.2 pounds of waste per day, which could easily be recycled. Recycling could significantly decrease the amount Texans spend annually to dispose of their trash and litter. Using recycled materials for the manufacturing of new products requires less energy than extracting and refining virgin materials, thereby reducing the combustion of fossil fuels for energy and the resulting air emissions, and conserves our natural resources. The State of Texas Alliance for Recycling, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, Keep Texas Beautiful, and Keep San Angelo Beautiful encourage state and community leaders to spread the word about programs that involve citizens in environmentally conscious behaviors. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, do hereby proclaim November 15th, 2021 as Texas Recycles Day and call upon our residents to join in activities that promote responsible environmental stewardship. Together, we can make every day Recycles Day and change the landscape in San Angelo, Texas. Would you please offer some words?
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much for the proclamation. We'd like to dedicate that to over 800 volunteers that help us change the landscape in San Angelo. Mayor Gunter, thank you, City Council, for allowing us to be the conduit to the community, to provide activities for our citizens to engage, have an impact, and make a difference. Today, we have over 1,500 students that will be participating in activities on 28 different campuses, and we're really excited to add our Boys and Girls Partners to that team. They'll also be making a succulent from a recycled bottle, and you all should have a little sample of that. So we're excited to provide those materials. I would like to add, in an attempt to increase our donations, we are introducing a new coffee label, and it's Keep San Angelo Beautiful, a gourmet blended and roasted coffee right here in San Angelo. So we will be at Christmas at Fort Concho. Would love for you to stop by our booth and make a donation and get some coffee. It's absolutely delicious. We'd like to appreciate our sponsors on that, Republic Services, BRI. We also received a grant yesterday, so excited, from HEB for our children's program as well through Keep Texas Beautiful. So thank you again. And we'll let some other guests.
I want to know how many tires you disposed of.
Okay, the final count on the tires, 12,800 tires. 12,800 tires. That's just incredible. And it may or may not be a drop in the bucket, but we've created a lot of awareness. We're going to keep up the good work. We're going to continue to take the tires until we have it down to just a small quantity in the
How
community.
many do you think are still out there?
Oh, it's hard to say.
I've got 4. I've got 4 that need to go.
4 and counting. But we're going to work really hard to continue to collect tires. I get calls every day. So we've stirred the pot, we've created the awareness. We need to continue to raise the funding to get those tires out of the community. And real proud of that feat from May to October. So it can be done, and we're going to continue the good work on that. I'm thinking, Joe, did you want to?
No, it's your show. You did good. You covered it all. You did a good job.
Come on. Butts Recycling, Mr. Keith Butts.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. We are here to show support for the great city of San Angelo and Charlotte, and Keep San Angelo Beautiful. My grandfather started BRI Butts Recycling back in 1986, and here we are, 2021, and I'm here working for the family-owned business. And yeah, we're just here to show support, so thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Come on, real quick, get up here.
I just want to thank everyone in the community for volunteering, because it's a lot of hard work, especially with those tires, throwing them around, those 18-wheelers. And especially to Charlotte, too, because she's done amazing work. Just in the almost 2 years, she's been our executive director.
Mr. Pfluger, would you please come forward? 2021 marks the 28th anniversary of Concho Christmas Celebration's annual Tour of Lights. The celebration, with over 3 million lights, is one of the largest Christmas lighting events in the state of Texas. The event offers a 2.5 mile walking or driving tour beginning behind the main post office on the corner of Abe Street and First Street and ending at El Paseo de Santa Angela. Hundreds of community volunteers greet tour guests, inmates from the Department of Corrections and Tom Green County Sheriff's Office Community Work Detail assist with installation of Christmas scenes. Members of the San Angelo Restaurant Association supply meals to the inmates, and RSVP volunteers deliver the inmates' meals. The community Christmas tree lighting ceremony will be held Saturday, December 4th, 2021 at 5:15 p.m. at the corner of South Chadbourn and West Concho Avenue. Activities will include the San Angelo Community Band conducted by Dr. Constance Kelly of Angelo State University and the Twin Mountain Tonesmen directed by Mark Clark. The community tree lighting will be followed by the 19th Lights of Christmas Parade at 6 p.m., which may be viewed on Chadbourn between 4th Street and Concho Avenue, on Concho Avenue between Chadbourn and Oaks, and on Oaks back to 2nd Street. The Tour of Lights can be seen Sunday through Thursday from 6 to 10 p.m. and each Friday and Saturday from 6 p.m. to midnight, December 4th through December 31st, 2021. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby declare Saturday, December the 4th of 2021 as Concho Christmas Celebration Day and encourage citizens to join the activities and view the magnificent holiday lights that have become a community treasure. Thank you, Lee. Please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to take this opportunity to let you know that this year we're going to recognize the tremendous support we've had from the City Council from day one, Mayor Gunter from day one also, for the last 28 years. The city has been our partner, and we want to recognize it officially. Mayor's going to be our Grand Marshal this year to represent herself, the City Council, and all the citizens of San Angelo. We appreciate what y'all have done for us, and we look forward to many years to come. Thank you again, Mayor.
We will now move into the public comment section of our agenda. If you have comments, please come forward and state your name and your address or SMD location. Each citizen can speak just once per item unless asked to comment by council. Public comment is for 3 minutes unless extended by council or a translation service. The proponent or opponent, 5 minutes unless extended by council or translation services. Council has no obligation to respond to comments or questions from the public. Any response from a member of the City Council to non-agenda comments is limited to a statement of specific factual information, recitation of existing policy, directing staff to place a subject on a future agenda. Do we have people in the audience today who would like to add comment, public comment?
Good morning, Council. Anna Bartosh, Single Member District 1. My heart is hurting today because we, as a city, are encouraging this shot for our children. The shot, I don't know how many of you know, it is experimental use only. It has not been fully approved. And the shot is... Well, the children have a 99.9%, even greater, survival rate from the COVID. And Since their survival rate is so high, I don't understand why we are pushing this experimental vaccine. So it's not really a vaccine, but they call it that. The experimental, adults can make up their own mind, but children are not, I don't believe they have all the information to make up their own mind, and so we're pushing this. I know there's always a monetary portion to this. I know doctors get $400 per shot, but it is experimental use only. It is still in trial. I don't know if everybody knows that anybody who got the shot, you are just a guinea pig, because this trial does not end until 2023. So they are using us as experimental subjects, and my heart hurts for using children as such. Thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, no child can show up without a parent for the shot. Would that be correct? So it's the parent making the decision, not the child.
Well, I know WHO, in one of their recent communiques, I don't know if Texas this is part of Texas, but by reason that the child is enrolled in school, that is the parent's permission. This is from the WHO. So the parent may or may not know their child is getting a shot. I don't know if Texas follows that, but I know that's from WHO.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Additional public comment? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to offer public comment? All right. I do want to just ask, I see Major in the back, and Shane Kelton was here a few minutes ago. I think most of us as council members are receiving a lot of phone calls concerning the buildup of weeds and a huge need for TxDOT to get their areas mowed. So could we just, Major or Shane, can you come forward and offer comments on it? Because as I drive around, I'm seeing lots of areas that need some major mowing going on.
Come on down, Shane.
Yeah.
You want door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3?
It's a straw.
With TxDOT has a contract for mowing all of their areas, whether it's in town or even out in the counties. They contract all that service out and don't have an in-house crew like we do here within the city. So they did have, I know that they did have, when they were going through some of their turnover within the area, within the district and the area, that they did let one of their contracts lapse. I think that they have gone back out, they rebid it, they have their contracts in place. I think it's just a matter of them getting the contractor in here and getting started on it. They did 2 years ago, they did up the number of cycles for the city, within the city limits, from 2 times a year to 3 times a year. But again, I think due to that lapse that they had within that contract, I think they lost one of those times. So I think that's why we're seeing some more things overgrown that we normally have in the past. But I think as we move into this next year, I think those cycles will pick back up. And I'll reach out to the new area engineer.
If you would, because I'm getting multiple emails or text messages a day on how ugly it looks and how overgrown it is. And I'm on Sherwood Way out in front of HEB looks really bad. And I know there's complaints on North Bryant Boulevard as well. In terms of, but anyway, lots of phone calls and lots of text messages. So if we could just push them a bit on it and find out what their game plan is.
I'll reach out to their new area engineer and their operations director over at TxDOT. We'll reach out to them and see when their next cycle is scheduled. My guess is we're going into fall. It should be any time now. But again, I'll reach out to them and we'll touch base and try to get that mowed.
I know our late rains also made it grow
spurred,
like crazy, but it would be great. Lucy?
Hey, Shane, can you repeat that? That would be 3 times a year, correct?
They did up it about 2 years ago. They upped it from 2 times a year to 3 times a year. And well, it may have been 4 years ago now. I kind of lose track of time, but they did up it.
A lot of people forget, and they keep on asking and calling us, and we keep on telling them, well, it's 2 times, now it's going to be 3, but they don't realize that, hey,
And it depends on the rain. There's some
Yes.
years when we get a lot of rain during the summer that 3 times is not near enough.
Exactly.
And so, and we do, the city of San Angelo, we do the area around the new entrances coming into town. We do have a separate contract with TxDOT to where we maintain those specific areas. So you do see those maintained a little more often as our crews are maintaining those, the city's crews are maintaining those. And so you do see those maintained more than the TxDOT cycle, and so that may be confusing as well, because you see from 14th Street all the way back to Avenue I or Avenue J that's maintained by the city, and not, those areas aren't maintained by TxDOT, so there could be some confusion there as well too.
and I also wanted to ask you, when I was driving into this morning on that great road of Bell Street, it's really nice, but then on the side, there's a lot of weeds, right there next to the nice new sidewalk. Who's in charge of that, the property owner or the city?
If it's still within the active construction zone, the contractor is responsible for
already
maintenance on
complete.
that. If it's outside of that, then it's the property owner. If it's outside of the construction zone.
And then depending on right-of-ways, right? So would everything on Bell Street be city right-of-way or
No,
property owner?
It's going to be private. Everything from behind curb is going to be the responsibility of the adjacent property owners.
We
But
might
that-
need to get a hold of those property owners
Okay.
and let them
We,
know.
we will work with them as we transition out of the construction zone areas. A lot of times there is still some of that confusion, and so we'll work with them to make sure that we work on getting that knocked down.
Thank you.
Gary?
Jane, one of the questions I get a lot is, what about up around the bridge on North Bell where that accident happened a couple of years ago? Do we have any idea when TxDOT's going to tackle that? Because from where the construction stopped to the approach on the bridge on both sides is really, really rough. And I know that at one time, John had indicated that they were going to do that at the same time that they repaired the bridge. Do we know when they're going to plan on starting on that?
The original accident that happened 2 or 3 years ago, whenever, I can't remember exact timeframes, but when that original accident happened, they had to actually bid that project out twice. The first time they bid it out, it came way in over their projected budget. Bid it again, and they were about 2 weeks from actually starting construction when it got hit the second time. And then they had to go back and I believe and redesign and try to change order in some repairs for the other side that got hit. And I'm not sure where they are. I haven't heard an update from them here lately on what their construction timeframe is on that.
You might update us on Southland Boulevard since you're at the microphone.
The Southland Boulevard, they're starting to come back together. They've had some material issues, waiting on some rebar, some steel rebar to get in. They did get it in. Their crews should be starting today. Visited with Reese Albert, actually yesterday evening late. I visited with them, so they should have crews back in on Southland, both at the Southland Southwest intersection, southwest at the low water crossing, and they should be back on Bell Street as well again today as well. We did have they did have to pull their crews. Of course, they're struggling like everybody else with labor being as tight as it is, and so they're struggling as well. And so we are again working through that with them, and of course they're trying to juggle jobs as best they can with the crews that they have. But they did bring in an extra crew out of Abilene today, and so they should have crews in all 3 concrete roadway locations.
When will the lights on Chadburn Street come on officially?
The traffic signals?
Yes, sir.
We're hoping that on Monday we will be able to, they poured the concrete there at the corner of Tug and Chadburn. They still have the stamped portion to go, but we're hoping to basically be able to, next Monday, be able to move those barricades all the way back just to the edge of where the stamped concrete's going to go for the crosswalk, and we will be able to actually turn the signals on at that point to where it's actually a functioning phased intersection.
And what about the lights between the intersections? When will we see them?
They did have the back order on the electrical pull boxes, which are actually made out of concrete, or concrete based material, and so they're working on getting those in, and as soon as those are in, we have visited with the electrical contractor, and they're ready to go just as soon as they get those pull boxes.
Do we have any idea about the time frame?
We were expecting them this week, but nobody showed up yet.
Okay, all right.
Maybe for Christmas?
Maybe for Christmas, yes, ma'am.
Thank you for those updates. Greatly appreciate it. Any other public comment today? With none, we will move into the consent agenda. I'll start with Larry and ask if there's any items on the consent agenda you would like to pull.
No, ma'am.
Lane? Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Harry? Tom?
No, ma'am.
Tommy? Then may I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Lane, seconded by Larry. Any public comment on the consent agenda? With no public comment on the consent agenda, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, consent agenda is passed 7-0. We will move into our regular agenda. Comments regarding items on the regular agenda may be made by the public when each item is discussed as outlined above. Applicants, proponents, and appellants are accepted from the time limit above and must limit their remarks to less than 5 minutes. The first item is 6A, discussion of ordinances governing dog ownership and possible action. And Morgan, you're on today.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to come before y'all today. We do have a brief presentation about dog ordinances and the governance over owning dogs inside city limits. There are some pretty basic ordinances. For example, your dog must be housed in a secure enclosure. It must be secure at all times. It must be rabies vaccinated. That's actually state law and then reiterated in the local ordinance as well. There is a requirement to spay-neuter owned pets. There are a few exceptions to that. For example, if the animal's medically fragile, if it's a show dog, there's a handful of exemptions that can happen for that spay-neuter requirement. And then state law requires a registration. We enforce that to be a microchip, and so all animals must be microchipped, all pets, and so that is required for dogs under the ordinance. They must be prevented from any nuisance barking or any other nuisance behavior that is a violation if there's excessive barking and can be taken up as a complaint through our court system. And then the dog must be housed on the premises where the owner resides. You can't have, for example, a shop dog that lives at your place of business for security purposes. There may be additional requirements depending on the household. For example, if a breeder's permit is required if you do have an animal that you want excluded from that spay-neuter requirement that is not otherwise excluded, and that is subject to planning review as it is considered a home business if you are selling those dogs. There also may be a requirement for a multi-pet permit. Anybody who has more than 7 dogs over 4 months of age is subject to the multi-pet permit and must
So what
renew.
happens if they have more than 7?
If they have more than 7 dogs over 4 months of age, they can receive, we notify them that they're required to have a permit. If they fail to make application for a permit or get permitted within an appropriate amount of time, they can be subject to citations. We do try to connect them with rehoming services. Let's adopt out some of these dogs to get compliant with the city ordinance. Then to kind of speak to the dog at large process, when we get a call for a dog being loose in a neighborhood, for example, we're going to respond. We're immediately going to secure the dog on the truck, load that dog up so it's no longer running loose. That can prove difficult during if the dog's particularly evasive in a wide open area. But most dogs, we drive up, put a leash on it, get it on the truck. We do make an attempt to contact owner at that time. We'll, of course, scan for microchip, look for any tags. We will ask any neighbors if there's someone out, gardening, hey, do you know this dog? Try to contact, if the dog was right in front of, this blue house, we'll look up water customer and say, hey, are you missing a dog? Did it just get out? Most dogs are found loose within 400 feet of their front door. So we do try to make that a contact with the owner. They're on the scene. If the owner's not available to readily take possession of their dog, we will impound that dog and bring it into the shelter. If there's a potential owner identified, we'll continue working those services through our office, trying to contact the owner. Ideally, the owner comes and redeems that dog. At that time, they are subject to citations. Having a dog at large is a Class C misdemeanor under our ordinances. They are subject also to paying the fees to redeem their dog. It is a $36 impound fee and $10 per night boarding. Ideally, you pick your dog up same day, but those fees can escalate.
The biggest issue really is not those that are, quote, owned by somebody, but those that are owned by nobody. Because that's where we're getting most of the complaints, is not about dogs at large that are owned by somebody, whether they're microchipped or not. The issue is the dogs nobody claims that are running loose. And I know the biggest problem is by the time somebody calls you all and someone can show up, those dogs could be 8 blocks away or 9 blocks away. So the unfortunate thing is that capturing those dogs that are owned by nobody or released by somebody is a timing issue. And that's pretty hard to nail down because just logically, the time from a phone call to actual arrival could be 20 or 30 minutes. It's not going to be 3 minutes, and that's just a fact. So that's where the issues are the dogs and the groups of dogs, whatever you call them, that are loose and become more vicious because they're in greater numbers.
Sure. For aggressive dog at large and packs of dogs, we do escalate it. We'll work with a willing property owner in the area to set and bait a live trap to try to trap those animals. Then the property owner would notify us. We check those traps morning and night. We bait them in the morning, check them again at night. And so we do have a few areas in town as we worked in the last year where there's calls for multiple dogs at large. And for those, we will trap them, bring them in. And so we just would skip past step 3, right? That the owner doesn't redeem the dog. We retain the dog, assess it for adoptability.
How many dogs do we pick up that are not claimed by anybody on a weekly, monthly, or annual basis?
I can say of the 90% of animals that left alive last year, 40% were owner redemptions. Now, that's not just dogs, and it could be frequent flyers. For example, a dog that has been out, a couple times in the same year. So for individual separate dogs, I could get you that information, but a large number of our animals are owner redeemed.
So it really is a problem of owner redemption, not packs of wild dogs.
Our owner redemption stats are much higher than other communities like us that are no-kill cities. Best practices would be 15% of your animals are going back to owner. We have 40%. So we do have greater than average animals going back to their owner.
Does a fee escalate if an owner has been found more than once or twice or 3 times with their dog at large and you've picked them up and they have to come claim it? Or is it the same standard fee every single time?
The fees don't escalate, but the citations quite often do. So for example, if your dog is found at large January 1st and you claim that dog, or we get in contact with you in some way, we'll write a citation for dog at large. We'll also give you notice, hey, also your dog's supposed to be spay-neutered, microchipped, rabies vaccinated. We often give citizens time to get that done. Hey, in 10 days, I need proof of your neuter. Please have your vet fax that over. In the event that it's the second time, the 10 days passed, they didn't provide compliance, we attempted contact, they ghosted on us. In the event that the second time the dogs are at loose, at that point they can get 4 citations: failure to spay neuter, failure to rabies vaccinate, failure to microchip, and dog at large. And so in that way, the fees through the municipal courts can escalate, but our fee structure for the impound and boarding is set no matter the number of times. We have looked, there are other cities that are no-kill like us that the first time your dog's in the shelter, it's a free redemption. We don't charge you the fee, they don't charge the fees. The second time, it's a nominal fee. The third time and above, it would be a quite hefty fee to help encourage, keeping your dog secure.
So the third time is when the fees really become greater.
That's what other communities have done. We've explored launching that locally, and there are pros and cons to that. So in place right now, the fees are the same, but it's the citations that will increase for your dog being out more times, multiple times in a 12-month period.
Lucy?
Morgan, let me ask you something. So if a dog is taken to the animal shelter and the person comes and claims it and he's not neutered, can they still take him, or does he have to be neutered?
It's the owner's responsibility to get that animal neutered, and so we will either issue a citation or give a deadline to get that animal neutered. They do take their animal unaltered. It's not the city's responsibility to take that animal neutered. There is a requirement that all adopted pets have to be spayed neutered. That's state law, but for owner redemptions, it's the owner's responsibility to do that at their expense.
Well, I was just asking, say for instance, if my dog got picked up and then I was going to go get him at the dog pound. Well, this did happen back 10, 15 years ago. He got picked up. I couldn't get him unless I was going to pay. It would have cost me $300 to take him without being neutered, or $65 if he was neutered. Of course, he got neutered because it was cheaper. So I was just wondering if that was still in effect.
No, the legislation has changed.
Okay, so they take them home, and they're asked to have them neutered.
Required to, yes.
Okay, and like the mayor was talking about, as far as the time, whenever these incidents happen, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, what would be the solution to something like that?
If it is an aggressive dog at large, or if it results in a bite to a person or another mammal, we do respond at 2 o'clock in the morning. We have 4 animal services officers that are in the rotation for on-call. So any emergency after-hours calls, we would still go to at 2 o'clock in the morning. And a dog bite or an aggressive dog at large would qualify as an emergency after-hours call-out. Okay, so in the event that a dog at large does escalate to a bite, occasionally a bite does happen just on its own property, but if a dog bites a human or other mammal, we do come in and do an investigation. We collect witness statements, photographs, vaccine history. Depending on the severity of the bite, the location geographically where the bite occurred, that dog could be declared dangerous by myself as the rabies control authority, or could be declared vicious by the municipal court system. That does require additional items to be met to own that dog. The animal is impounded for a quarantine with 10 days of observation just for the rabies control. And then at the end of that quarantine, the owner redeem. So at that time, the owner could be subject to citations for dog at large, failure to vaccinate, rabies vaccinate, failure to spay neuter, failure to microchip. So similar to the owner redemption for just dog at large. There would also be the fees for the $36 impound and the $10 per night boarding. And then they must provide that proof of rabies vaccine, spay neuter, and microchip. In the event that a dog is declared dangerous, there's a number of things that the owner additionally has to comply with. They have to have a secure enclosure inspected by our staff. They have to have signage on that enclosure that a dangerous dog resides. They have to carry additional liability insurance, oftentimes above what you carry in your normal rental or homeowner insurance. They have to renew that annually. They have to notify us if they move or they're prohibited from rehoming the dog without our approval. And if it's a nuisance or vicious that's gone through the court system, the court can actually order that animal euthanized if it is, a concern for the public safety to that level. So there's additional things that can be required once your dog has bitten.
have any, oh, excuse me. Go ahead. Do you have any idea why we're having this problem right now? You know, sometimes we don't hear about it for a long time, and then all of a sudden, there's dogs everywhere, there's stray cats everywhere. Is there any reasoning why this is happening certain times?
Unfortunately, this is business as usual for us. We respond to thousands of cases a year of dog bites. Cats aren't considered stray. They're allowed to free roam. They're allowed to be community cats. And so it's really stray dogs that we would if a cat bites somebody, of course, we're going to impound for quarantine. But if a cat is running loose in a neighborhood, that's not against the law. It is allowed by law. So we work thousands of cases a year of dog or livestock at large, of bite investigations. Unfortunately, it is quite common in our biggest, daily tasks to respond to such calls.
Okay, continue.
As you mentioned, the response time is tough. We have 4 animal services officers Monday through Friday. We have the 1 for after-hours call-outs. There are times that we're on a bite call, case, and police has found an injured cat, and so we just meet us at the scene and say, we found this cat, is trying to get with the cases. So the staffing is tough. There are a number of things that I think would be just more proactive to this issue. If we had electronic devices beyond a smartphone, like a laptop or a tablet that could do quite a bit in the field with communicating with residents, with the professional in the field, that bears a lot of fruit with being able to do, yard assessments, dialogue with the residents, build that rapport, and encourage keeping your dog secure, brainstorming how to keep your dog secure, just being able to dial with the residents and identify those residents while we're still on scene. I know that the city of El Paso has had a lot of success with a private fencing program where they got grant dollars to do, small repairs. Hey, your dog's gotten out. We had a case recently where a small dog had broke out a ticket in a privacy fence. The dog became stuck or wedged and was in distress. We were attempting to contact owner. While we were doing that, we're attempting to get the dog to safety and get her out. She, of course, bit my staff while we were doing that, which is something, dogs want to do. And so it's just a case that kept escalating. And so when you have something like that, if there can be a quick fix, hey, we've got this donated fencing material, can we patch this small area? Or if it's a bigger case, we refer it to the grant for additional repairs, pretty substantial repairs of the fence. One thing that we struggle with is I don't have homes for all these dogs. So when it's appropriate to invest in a family, to keep their dog, to keep their family together, to have resources, then that's a happy ending for all parties. The city doesn't bear the taxpayer dollars of caring for that animal at the shelter, an owned animal at the shelter, and the citizen gets to maintain and keep that pet for its life. So that is something that the city of El Paso had a lot of success with that we could explore as well. We would recommend that be pursued with grant dollars or private funding to launch in a pilot program here. And also just to speak to the response time, if we had even 2 additional animal services officers, we could cover more hours in the day. We could have like a 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. So you catch folks that are waking up in the morning, they come outside, there's this dog. Right now we're only taking calls for service from 8 to 5 outside of those emergency calls. And so if we had additional staff to kind of spread that and be available earlier in the day, later in the day, have more coverage of the city and faster response times.
Well, we just finished with our budget not long ago. Was this a request during the budget session to add additional officers? Because I have a real problem with us getting to the middle of November with the budget starting October 1, and all of a sudden we have needs for additional people.
It's just since the council brought it up today as a concern about dog at large, as I mentioned, the response time, the responses and the calls we're getting are quite common, normal business for us. And so we were maintaining the status quo just fine. That's why we thought the budget was sufficient with what was submitted and approved.
Is the problem greater this year than it has been?
I know it's gotten y'all's attention more. I know there was recent news coverage. As far as number of calls for service, our records management for that is quite frankly on pen and paper. We don't have a robust records management software like the police where they can say, I've gotten this many calls for service, this many responses, this. So I don't
We have we
that
could do
data, but-
spreadsheets. Do we have computers? So we could do spreadsheets and computers? And
Sure, we-
Because
I
that would be like, anybody sitting there answering the phone could manage that spreadsheet, I would think.
We could go back in that data and try to pull something. It would be, it wasn't something we could pull in time for this meeting, but I could go through that original paper documents and start entering that data.
I wouldn't go backwards, but I'd certainly get prepared to go forwards with it. But it would seem to me to be something that you get a spreadsheet in front of you, get a phone call, document that phone call.
Sure. The person that does cover the phones also covers the front desk, is also dispatching, is also looking up microchips, is also doing all the data entry. So it's something that we would have to explore how to staff that.
Morgan, would the electronic devices help that?
I think that it would, because the professionals in the field would be doing their own case entry, their own lookup of microchip, their own lookup of water customer, their own lookup on the local lost and found websites, that would take that off the front desk, and the professional in the field would do that. There are days that they're rushing right to the next call, but to the extent they can stay on scene with the animal, they could do that work themselves there on scene.
You have that within your budget to purchase those electronic devices, or no?
I don't.
And how much money are you talking about?
If it was some kind of tough book, so police has tough books that are quite expensive. They're meant to ride in trucks, and so I could get quotes for that.
We don't need the same level that the police have.
I don't think we need the same level that police has. So I know that code and planning uses permits. They use tablets, and so we'd be happy to explore that as well.
Don't other animal shelters have electronic devices that they use? I mean, I would assume that somewhere in the state of Texas, somebody has a device that they're using. We could call and ask and talk to them about it.
Oh, sure. It's tablets, laptops. It's a variety of how they do that.
Do other animal shelters use electronic devices?
In the field, absolutely.
So how many do? Who's your great example of a city that does, and how it's helped in a good case study for how it improves the service?
Yes, absolutely. We can look into that. But
Why don't you bring us to, if you know, the cost of, I guess, 4 electronic devices for your field service personnel. I wouldn't think you would need more than 4, would you? Or would you? I don't want to tell you what you need, but why don't you bring back what you need?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Any other comments? Lucy? Harry?
We're talking about money. This looks like these are longer-term solutions. We know that these dog packs are growing in numbers every time another dog gets out and they join that pack. We've got to find something that's going to work short-term, today, tomorrow, because with the number of dogs that are running in packs today, we already know that they're injuring other animals. At some point in the very near future, they're going to injure a person, and then we've really got a problem.
Well, I asked the question if it was greater today than it's been, and the response was no. It's become a bigger conversation. So is there a growing pack of dogs existing in this city? And I would think the quickest solution to this is electronic devices, which, number one, you can buy pretty quick once we know what the costs are, and be effective in that sense pretty immediately. That is an immediate response. Yes, Lucy?
Morgan, I want to ask you, at our last meeting, a gentleman came up and was talking about the cages that were real old, real heavy, all that. Are you in need of that kind of equipment also, and the tranquilizer gun and that kind of equipment also?
Sure. We had worked with Mr. Elliott and set a live trap there. It's quite, at his residence, it is quite heavy duty. It's something we manufactured in-house, quite frankly, and it's built to withstand pretty large dogs, pretty active dogs. The recommendation he had to buy the supplemental one at Tractor Supply, we did buy it. We have used it in a few cases. It works fine with smaller dogs, more docile dogs. We did used to have 2 such of the heavy duty traps. We loaned one out to a partner jurisdiction and didn't get it back. So that was tough for service response time. The tranquilizer devices, we have adequate devices. The devices are they ride around in our trucks all day, and they're quite delicate. And so there's a tiny screw that holds the side on that only has like 1.5 thread that turns. And so once we're on scene with an evasive dog trying to dart it, it's quite a process to set up that gun every time to deploy a tranquilizer. We also have supply chain issues with, as everyone does. Our plant that makes the tranquilizer darts, the actual darts, has shut down operations for a year as they can't get aluminum sourced in from overseas. And so we have a very limited number of darts at this time. And so we are working on a solution there as well. But as far as the live traps, the large live traps, and the tranquilizer devices, the actual gun that deploys it, I think we're appropriately resourced for that.
So you don't need to benefit from any more, like he recommended?
We did buy that one within our existing budget, the $129 from Tractor Supply. It was very much something we could absorb in our existing budget. And so we did do that. So now we have 2 large dog traps to support residents and neighborhoods experiencing, aggressive dogs at large or quite frequent dogs at large that are evasive that we can't catch.
Lane, you had a question?
Morgan, one of the biggest complaints that I get is from when we have multiple calls of service, especially after hours, holidays, and weekends. What is our protocol and how we handle those? Because a lot of people have told me that they get told that they're not going to come out because of those 3 factors.
Okay, there is an approved emergency after-hours call-out that's approved by our board, the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, and those include aggressive dog at large, injured animal, dog in a school zone, so it's 7 o'clock in the morning before we're open for business, any police support, fire support. Those are ones we'll come out for at any time. If it is, and those calls are routed through police dispatch, where they take the call, vet it for, is it this emergency level, and then dispatch it to the animal services officer on call.
Larry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious if you coordinate with the existing on-site pages that are, I think one of them's called something like Get Me Home.
Yes,
Do you work with those people?
Our rescue partner, Contra Valley Paws, hosts Help Me Get Home. So there's a number of lost and found groups to use locally. Help Me Get Home has a large following, so we absolutely check that if we take in a dog. We all get an email for the Help Me Get Home's postings, so we know, hey, be looking for this, blue Great Dane. And so we also have, of course, Finding Rover, which is our technology that's a facial recognition that works in the back of our pet management software. So if you upload your picture now, just proactively, hey, here's a picture of my dog, we may call you before you even know your dog's missing. Hey, I got a match on Finding Rover. Is this your dog? Yes, I haven't even made it home from work yet. I'm so glad to be connected. So there's a number of lost and found sites like that we do monitor and support.
Going back a few slides, I'm curious too how you arrived at 7 dogs being allowed in the house. Seems excessive to me, and it's really a relative question. 7 Chihuahuas is a whole lot different from 7 Great Danes. I wonder if there couldn't be something to at least address the issue that having the larger dogs presents a hygiene problem for the neighborhood, not just that home.
Sure. That's been in city ordinance for approaching a decade. It's something that could absolutely be revisited and looked at.
Question is, in the 10 years it's been effective, has the dog problem become a worse problem? It's all statistical. If we're going to relook at an ordinance, we need to understand what the growth and problems are if they exist?
The daily application of that ordinance is quite often accidental litters that have grown up. We don't have a whole lot of citizens that are intentionally owning 7 or more dogs. Those that are have, an appropriate setup. If it's bigger dogs, they have kennels in the back, they have a bigger yard, they have a plan for that. Most commonly, when we notify someone, hey, you're in violation of the multi-pet permit, they say, oh yeah, my female had a litter, they all grew up, I couldn't find homes for them, and then so we try to match them with adoption services, spay-neuter services, to get that down to a manageable level. It's quite uncommon someone intentionally owns 7 adult dogs.
Lucy?
Oh, when you were talking about the app, the Get Me Home app, the one that I see constantly is our next door in our neighborhoods. Everybody's always posting pictures of, hey, found this dog in my driveway or found this dog at the end of the block. And they'll put them out there for the owner to see them and call them and come pick them up. So the neighborhoods are working as much as they can. It's whenever the dog is not tagged. You don't know how to get a hold of the owner. So that's...
I would say the vast majority of our 40% of animals returned to their owner were not tagged. They were found through grassroots efforts like websites, social media. Of course, we post the daily intake on the city's Facebook. It's a Claim Your Canine post, and someone tags somebody, hey, brother-in-law, isn't this your dog? And so I would say the vast majority of animals returned to their owner are not in any way tagged or chipped.
So with that statistic, it seems to me we need to do a big public information campaign about getting the dogs microchipped again. It's been a while, I think, since we've done that. I think we need to get really aggressive about getting out there and reminding everybody about the ordinance and the requirement to microchip, register your pets, and let's hit it hard. Sometimes a public campaign can produce dramatic results, so let's get that done. That's an easy start. Okay, continue.
That's the end of my presentation. I'm, of course, available for whatever other questions.
All right, so we're going to meet on December the 7th. Let's have some statistics on the electronic devices in terms of how many you might need and what the cost would be. And then look for any kind of grant fundraising opportunities for a fence program. If really El Paso is the only city that kind of has that, I'm not sure that's a viable option.
Austin does too, but we just thought we were more similar to El Paso.
Yeah, they're certainly much larger than our 99,807 people. All right, with that, any further comments? We'll move on the agenda. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
We'll go to item B, which is presentation, discussion, and possible direction for proposed redistricting boundaries resulting from population shifts from the 2020 decennial federal census. And Julia, you're on, or John's on, or the two of you are on. Okay, go for it.
May tag team a little bit. But
all right.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. Just real briefly on where we are, the city charter does require redistricting every 10 years after the census if there's significant population shift, which in this census there was. The plan makes very minimal changes because the shifts necessary to balance the districts was not very big, but again, it was big enough to require the shift. The plan does leave District 1 with fewer. In other words, it shifts more out of District 1 to allow for the anticipated growth so that over the next 10 years, as the city grows, it won't get too out of whack within that 10 years.
So in other words, you don't just take today's number and go with it. You take a look at the trend of the city in terms of where new housing plats and development are happening so you can accumulate this or project the statistics for the next 10 years.
Right. So basically, we overshoot just a little bit, but all of the numbers of the districts currently still end up roughly balanced.
Julia, I think you had a comment.
Yes. Would it be possible that we pause this presentation for a minute? We do have a citizen here that was requesting to speak on the previous item regarding the animals.
Okay, so let me stop a minute, and if you were here to make a comment, please come forward. We didn't take a vote, so we didn't ask for public comment. My apologies, so please come forward. That's okay.
My name is Mallory Hooker, and my address, 2606 Watson Street. I'm in the Paulian neighborhood, and I wanted to come and just kind of speak on this ordinance. I know y'all are going to be making more considerations before the December meeting, when I guess y'all would make your plan of action decision. But
Microphone's very tempting, isn't
I
it?
would love to touch it. I am the one who actually was on KLST KSAN about 3 weeks ago due to our cat being attacked in our front yard. We do live in Paulian. It's a family neighborhood, as many people know. Kids play outside. I have 4. That's why I have one with me. And our kids are outside all the time. This did happen at 2 o'clock in the morning. We caught it on our surveillance cameras we have outside. When I contacted animal control that morning, when we found out, we didn't even know at first. Our little 6-year-old found our cat in the front yard, which, was obviously traumatic. But at first we just thought, maybe a bobcat in the area, because we've seen some, or, maybe a car, and they just, put them up in the yard. We weren't really sure until we saw on the surveillance cameras. But anyway, once we saw what happened, when I contacted animal control at first, they were like, oh, no, we can't help you, because in order to help you, when there's a bite incident, it has to be witnessed. And I'm like, well, I have footage, from 2 different cameras, one across the street, one, it's very clear. My husband works for Intertel, so we have great cameras. But anyway, so I went in person, and when I got there and I showed the girl behind the door, I can just attest to what this Morgan, I think her name was talking about, how busy they are at the front desk. She was answering phones. There were 4 of us in line just to talk to her. And then, of course, the dogs and cats and whatever they have in there. I don't know. She just seemed very busy. But she was really kind, and she answered all of my questions. But she was like, there's nothing we can do. And I'm like, that's insane to me, that my cat can be attacked on camera, and my cat passed away because of this, can be attacked on camera, and because you didn't have a person standing outside, you can't see it. And at the time, I actually had him with me at the same time. And I said, so you're telling me if my 1-year-old walked out in front of my yard and was attacked and no one saw it, there was nothing you could do? And she literally was like, that's the city ordinance. And I'm like, what? So I posted on Nextdoor, like Lucy said, and I said, hey, whose dogs are these? I color video. Of course, no one has come forward, but at least it's out there. They've come back to my house. The dogs have twice together, and they have collars, so they're not strays. I'm sorry, it's beeping. They're not strays, but the ordinance about the biting needs to be revisited, because that's crazy to me that can happen to a pet or a child or anyone, and without someone seeing it, there would be nothing they could do. That to me is crazy.
Okay, so Teresa, we need to relook at the ordinance relative to animal bites and what the policy is, and if it could be tightened and relooked at. So if we could take that on, that will help. Thank you for coming forward.
Yes, thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
the time.
Yes.
I apologize, I did not know you were back there. I haven't met you in person, so when you left the phone call, I was hoping you had gotten my response.
Yes. No, you're fine. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Please come forward.
My name is Rick Ellis. I live at 1818 Shady Point Circle Drive here in San Angelo, out at the lake. I want to reiterate what she said about the dog bite ordinance. We had a dog attack in our neighborhood. My neighbor's dog was attacked by a pit bull from across the circle. Severely injured. Her dog had to be quarantined at home, locked up in the house for 10 days, as well as the other dog. That dog has since gone on to bite 2 other dogs in 2 other neighborhoods. They keep moving the dog around instead of destroying it or euthanizing it, whatever. Animal control does what they can, but I think it's more of a staffing issue than it is a mechanical issue. I don't think electronics is going to solve the issue. There's people in our neighborhood that don't keep their dogs fenced. We've talked to them. They said, I don't believe in fences. We let our dogs out every morning. And I know because they come down and dump in my yard. I've talked to the guy. He's like, his dog's not neutered. He doesn't fence it, doesn't believe in fencing. I think the only solution would be to have animal control come out there. And I'm going to start a campaign to call you every day by my neighbors, and we're going to get that dog taken care of. There's several dogs. I think there's a total of 5 that are routinely out every day. You can set your watch by it. I think animal control, in order to take care of a situation like that, would have to come, station the truck there, sit and wait for these dogs. Because, I mean, it's 8 o'clock every morning. The people turn them out. And they
We'll have
run
them
through the
there.
neighborhood. So expect a bunch of calls at the animal control from our neighborhood. But, you know, something's got to be done because that dog, the pit bull that mysteriously gets moved around, continues to bite, has attacked a person. I don't know if he bit him, but he ran him into his house. He did attack the neighbor's dog, and like I say, several occasions where that dog should have been put down long ago. And it's just continued to allow this dog to go at large, so.
We'll do 2 things. We're going to review the bite policy.
I think that's
And we
wise.
will ask that our animal folks go out there and station themselves and see what we can do with that. So
Yeah.
we'll make it,
And I understand they're shorthanded, they can't be everywhere, we're a
we'll
large
get it
city.
focused.
But I think staffing would be a definite issue rather than these other suggestions they were looking for, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much. Any other people who were, citizens were here to add comment on the animal services issue? Loose dogs. Thank you all for staying and coming forward and commenting. We'll attack the issue. Thank you. I think attack would be the wrong word to use concerning the thing we're talking about, so my apologies for using that word. Okay, we are going to go back now to item B, and John, you're going to continue.
Yeah, thank you. The last bullet here is just that Julia looked and assured that the changes don't result in any of the current council members being moved out of the district or, you know, into another district. So one of the things, and again, I forgot to point out, this was all done by a consulting attorney that the city hired to do this. So we're reporting to you what they did, but this wasn't our work. But they did look, as they do, at the population and both the total population and voting age population. And what they found was across the city, the Anglo, Black, and American Indian populations all decreased throughout the city. And you can see the list there of the demographics that increased throughout the city.
They added new demographics, so there were 3 new categories this year. What were they?
Actually, Mayor, upon further review, we were able to find that detailed information from our 2010 consultant. So what we thought had been consolidated into or broken out into more categories, we actually did have that background data.
Good, thank you.
And the purpose of today is to accept public comment, but bringing back for your approval at the December 7th meeting, there'll be a public hearing as well as action at that time. And I think that's the last slide, but I think now Brian can pull up the map, and I can briefly kind of talk about the changes that were made. Again, they were fairly minimal.
John, will you go back to that one little slide where you had District 3 and 4? What was, I didn't get to read to say, what is?
Oh, District 3 and 4 currently are strong minority districts, meaning that the majority of the population within those districts are non-Anglo, and that with these changes, that won't change, if that makes sense. I will point out, as you see on the map, the districts that we moved population out of are majority Anglo, and we're moving population into those districts that are majority non-Anglo, which very slightly, and you'll see the boundaries don't move very much, but very slightly dilutes the minority percentages in those districts, but moving them, I don't remember the numbers, but from 62% to 59% or something in that range. So you can see here the maps. There are basically 4 changes. And so, again, with the growth in District 1, which is yellow on this map, we had to move some population out of District 1 and that was largely moved into District 3 because it needed more population to balance out. And so you can see in this area here, what is in yellow, would be the new boundary of District 3. So all of this population would be moving from District 1 to District 3. Similarly, there's a slight change down here where just a little bit from District 1 would be moving into District 6. You might wonder why District 6 also had too much population, but there was so much we had to get out of District 1. We moved a little bit to 6 and quite a bit up to 4. But then if Brian will move that back down to, I think, number 1, then we also moved population out of District 6 into, and I'm messing up my districts here, 2. So from 6 to 2, so you can see all of this in blue here, and this little finger here are moving from District 6 into District 2. And then there's a little bit moving from District 6 into 5, this little triangle piece. And then the final change is 3 blocks here that are moving from the orange there into, from 4 to 5, yes. They actually looked at a couple of different options. This little finger down is not ideal, but that was really the only way to move population as we needed to, the right amount of population to get it up into District 2. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So there were not any dramatic changes in redistricting, just shifting a few out of District 1, which we know the growth of the city has been aggressive in District 1, as it is in the Bluffs area as well. So that's where a lot of the growth has occurred. So that would make sense to start shifting and balancing it out, but nothing major.
No, just moving a few hundred people from one to the other, again, to balance. What the consultant looked at was basically taking the new population of the city, dividing it by the 6 districts, and that gets you the number you would expect to have if each district was exactly equal. And so we shifted population to get close to that. You'll see in your packet you have some numbers that show, obviously we can't get the numbers exact, but they're within a few percentage points of being that equal number we were shooting for.
So today, it's information only. We're not taking any sort of a vote to accept this as presented or just being informed today. So are there any questions at this point for John or Julia regards to these statistics and the movement? Harry?
I appreciate John making a clarification, because Daniel and I visited yesterday, and I didn't understand what those 1, 2, 3 were, 4 were on the map, so.
Any other comments, Larry?
I just wondered, this public hearing, is that going to be separate from the next city council meeting? Or is this an unscheduled meeting that the public can come in and?
No, my understanding is it's just it'll be a regular item on the next meeting on December 7th. That's your next meeting. I don't think there's a separate public hearing planned.
But people may show up at the December 7th meeting if they choose to make public comment.
That's right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, John and Julia. We'll move on to item C.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I think we should call for public comment now. I do think some folks, I know
Okay.
Vonna from the county's here, and so.
Any public comment?
Anna Bartos, single member District 1. Is there a way that we could get a copy of this map so that we can share with other people so they are aware of what's
Go
going
on to our website on the agenda packet, and the backup documents are there so you can print it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Shirley?
Good morning, Shirley Spears, single member District 5. I had reviewed the map, and I had a couple of questions. I'm glad that John was able to explain it, because I couldn't really understand the movement. So do we have any detail on I heard him say a couple of hundred people, But in each of the instances, like you're moving some from 6 to 2 and 6 to 5, and you're moving some from 4 to 5, do we have an actual number? And do we have the demographics actually detailed as to what that movement is? And then my second question is, we have the December 7th meeting for the city council, which this will be voted on. Are we conducting a public meeting for the public in general to have an understanding of this process?
We just
Since we have
asked
to
that
deal with this for 10
question,
years.
and the answer was no, we're not doing a separate public meeting, but anyone may come to that meeting and offer public comment at that point in time. And certainly between now and then, any questions that you might have, please contact Julia or John, because they statistically have all of the information and can certainly address any specific numbers, et cetera, that you might have. And and you have a copy, Julia, you would have a copy to show the shift from district to district, correct? And by race.
We have the final numbers by district, broken out between total population and voting age population. We don't currently have the numbers from each move, but we can request that of the consultant.
Okay, and I didn't hear, did I miss the name of the consultant?
It's Allison Bass McKee LLC. They're out of Austin. They're the same company that the county's using. Yes.
Okay, well, we know we had a little hiccup with some of the responsiveness. So are they responding to the city inquiries? Like you're saying, you can get the data from them?
I think if we give them our timeline, I think they will respond with the firm deadline.
Okay, and what is our deadline for city redistricting?
The firm deadline from the state, I believe, would be March 1st.
Right at the election.
Right, prior to the primaries. But we are trying to get this finalized as early as possible so that the county can only print the voter cards once. It gets confusing if citizens receive one card now and then we do our redistricting, they receive an updated, you belong here, and then maybe SAISD finalizes their boundaries and they receive even a third card. So we're trying to wrap it up as early as possible so that we could hopefully be in sync with the county.
Okay, so the information that I just asked for that you're going to get with Allison to try to get the details on how many and all of that, how do you propose to communicate that to the public?
Public, I'm assuming we could do that via just our regular press releases and Facebook, things of that nature. Specifically, since you're here and requesting it, and the same with Ms. Bartosh, I can reach out to you too via email as well.
Okay, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
If
Any
I can
other
say
public
something.
comment?
There is a
Yes,
lot
just a
of
minute.
information, a lot of the statistics are in the background packet that show the growth percentage-wise and in numbers from 2010 to 2020. And again, that's broken out.
Yeah, it's in the back, again, it's just if you go to the agenda for today's meeting, the backup documents are there for all of the analysis and statistics, so you can print them from your home computer and get that information. It is very available. Just go to the backup documents. Larry?
First of all, I'd like to say that the work that Mr. James did is very admirable. I think it's terrific in that vein. But there's always going to be contentious issues connected with redistricting. And that's why I pose that question that I'm not in favor of having folks come in during our next meeting and voice their opinions at a moment where we're voting on it. I think there needs to be a separate meeting of folks within the community to come up and see what is being done and, see that it's being done fairly. And they're still going to have some objections to it. You can't avoid that. But I think it would be more helpful for everyone if we had a separate meeting apart from the city council meeting.
Daniel?
We can schedule something, Mayor, as far as that meeting for the citizens to come in and ask any questions they may have for clarification purpose. So I'll visit with John and Julia to make sure we can kind of get some schedule there. Shouldn't be a problem.
Any further public comment? With none, we will, oh wait, Shirley, come on.
Again, I want to support what Mr. Miller just said, Mr. Valenzuela. We would like to ensure that the public has an opportunity to visit. The other thing that we did with the county is we asked for an after-hours time for the public to be involved because everybody cannot come to an 8:30 city council meeting, for instance. And we just want to make sure that since the citizens have to deal with whatever is finalized for 10 years, that number one, they understand the process and what the council has done, and making sure it's transparent to the community. So I do absolutely urge you to host another session, but to ensure that it's after normal hours where other people can actually come and hear and voice their concerns.
We'll
Thank
do
you.
that. Thank you.
Susie Smith, and I'm in Larry's district. And not all of us are technically astute, So would it be possible to have a mail out that everybody would get, because we don't have our local newspaper anymore, hard copy, that we can pick up and get that information? And some of us, it's more difficult for us to, y'all that do it all the time, it seems very simple. But for some of us, it's very challenging, so I would appreciate a hard copy.
I think you could pick one up at the city clerk's office, but we're not going to do a mailing.
Okay, so you would get the information out that we could get it at the city clerk's office?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
At City Hall, city clerk's office at City Hall. Okay, any further public comment? I'm going to call it 1, 2, 3. We're moving on. Okay. We'll move on to item C. Am I on item C? Yes. Public hearing and consideration of a resolution approving a special use SU 2-1-02 to allow the sale of retail merchandise, including outdoor sales, in a single-family residential zoning district being approximately 0.298 acres located at 503 West Avenue R and 502 West Avenue S.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. You can see the properties here. This is South Bryant. This northern property already is used as basically outdoor sales. Merchandise that's placed outdoors, plants, planters, those sorts of things, and you'll see some pictures. Basically, this request is to expand that to the property across the alley. This is zoned residential currently. The plan for the area is neighborhood center, which is a commercial use. It is zoned single family, but back years ago, the one property got a special use for those outdoor sales. And so rather than rezoning it, they're asking for, basically, it's technically a new special use, but it's amending it to expand it to that property to the south. We did send out notices to the surrounding property owners, did not receive any in favor or in opposition. Just a few pictures of the site there. You can see some of the things they sell. I will note that one of the conditions that you'll see is that they keep any materials back sufficient distance to not create any traffic issues, and so they've agreed to that condition.
Have they been selling this product and I've seen it out there for years, but the question mark, has it been illegal? What they've been doing, or just
it's
what?
been legal on the one property. They're wanting to expand to the second
Thank you.
property.
Yeah.
And so here's the proposed expansion property there to the south. It is in compliance with the zoning. I won't read through all of these, but we've recommended some conditions to address, for example, shielded lighting so that they're not brightening the place for the neighbors next door, no outdoor speakers that would create noise, and the setback that I mentioned for outdoor merchandise. It will comply. They'll have to add 2 parking spaces because of that new property that they're adding. And there is a lot of commercial zoning already around the property. Staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission at their meeting on October 18th. And here's just the list of conditions. Again, I won't read through these, but these are intended to help protect the neighbors that are literally right next door, so limiting things like lighting. And as I mentioned, keeping the merchandise lower than 4 feet within 10 feet of the property line, so that cars pulling up aren't blocked, their view's not blocked onto Bryant from taller things like some of those trees you saw. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions from anyone on this item? Then may I have a motion for approval?
So move.
So moved by Harry, seconded by Lucy. Is there any public comment on this item? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item D, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance for Z 21-04, a request for approval to expand the boundary of the downtown district overlay zone, generally located north of Neff's Way, east of David Street, south of 4th Street, and west of Emmerich Street. John, you're on.
Thank you. You may remember, it's probably a year and a half ago, we had brought some changes to split what was then the River Corridor into the River Corridor, Downtown, and Cultural District, which you all approved those changes. At the same time, we had recommended expanding what became the Downtown District. And so you may recall we had proposed up to the freeway, roughly over to Main Street, and then over to the river, something like that. At the time, you all said you were interested in looking at an expanded downtown boundary, but that was too big. And so we worked with the Design and Historic Review Commission and Planning Commission to come back with this reduced expansion into the area you see in purple. Now, the purple was what staff had originally recommended, but through the public hearing and the town hall meeting that we had, ended up coming out the recommendation to basically extend it into this area as well. And you can see all of this is already within the river corridor. So basically what that does is extend the downtown district over to the river corridor, so there's no longer this donut hole that's not within either district. So there's what the final proposed boundary looks like as recommended by the Planning Commission. And I'll just note, I may have mentioned this, but this area is already within the downtown district. So I know you probably noticed we got a couple of opposition from those. Those people got notified because they're within 200 feet of the expansion, but they're already subject to the downtown district. I just wanted to show you a map in case there are questions. This is the zoning. So the blue is the downtown, the CBD zoning district. And so this is pulling most of the area that's already within the central business district zoning district into this design district. I'll take a step back and just remind you that what it means to be in the design district, it doesn't change the zoning, it doesn't change what uses are allowed on the property. It simply means that if you're making exterior changes to the building or building new buildings, it has to go to the Design and Historic Review Commission for approval to make sure it's in keeping with the character of the area. I'll add that not everything has to go to the DHRC. There are many items that can be approved by staff administratively, including things like paint colors and signage and some of that. I already mentioned the downtown district was created out of the overlay back in 2019, and staff did recommend the larger boundary, which you asked us to come back with a smaller proposal. I think I've talked about that. The alternative recommendation expands it over to the river corridor, over all the way to David Street. This is the notifications. We did send out a fairly large number of notifications. Within the affected property owners, we received 4 in favor and 4 in opposition, although I think at least 1 or 2 of those that opposed, after the town hall meeting, they were more comfortable with the recommendation after hearing more about it. However, they never formally withdrew their opposition, so it still counts as opposition. We also received 1 in favor and 3 in opposition outside the area that are not affected. Some of the reasons we recommend approval, as I mentioned, it is the central business district. It does leave out the industrial areas, basically between 4th Street and the freeway. A lot of the conversation at the Planning Commission had to do with those industrial areas and not wanting them to be within the design district. It does ensure quality design, as I mentioned. The standards do vary. I know this is some of the questions that came up at the Planning Commission. If you're right on Concho and Chadburn, for example, in a historic building, the review by the DHRC is very different than if you're maybe on Bryant, over there at Beauregard or somewhere. And so it's really context-based. It's what's around you is really what they look at, and making sure you're not doing something that detracts from everything else around you. And that gets to this last bullet here is, while this does place additional burdens on those property owners, it actually protects your property. If you're adjacent to another property, it ensures that what they do on their property doesn't devalue your property by putting in something that is out of context for the area. So staff does recommend this proposal, as did the Planning Commission unanimously at their October meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions from council members?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, if somebody has a house that's painted Pepto-Bismol pink, okay, and they choose to, it's flaking paint or whatever, and they want to repaint it Pepto-Bismol pink, can they do that?
Yes, in fact, when you all adopted the changes in 2019, one of the things you added was what we called like for like. So if you're replacing what's already there with exactly the same, it's a much simplified process. There's no fee to do that. You do have to give us some information in the planning department. Here's what I'm doing, but then if it's like for like, then it's automatically approved. It doesn't have to go to the commission. That's the same with roofing. We had a downtown church, for example, that had to go through this process, but they were taking off the tiles, putting on the exact same tiles, and so that was they got approval that same day.
All right, may I have a motion for approval?
So move.
Moved by Harry, seconded by Tommy. Any public comment? With none, we'll take a vote. Hello.
My name is Jamal Shumpert, single member District 2. I would like to say that I want to know why they didn't include the railroad, the industrial sector, in part of the downtown expansion. I believe it would bring a lot more tourism if you could add in the railroad and the history of the railroad, along with Fort Concho. They're like right beside each other. So I was curious why you wouldn't want to go a little bit further. And if it's a day process to be approved, as long as it stays a day process to be approved for any changes that property owners want, I don't think it should be a problem if y'all expand more and more.
So the question is, why have we not extended it further north to include the Houston Hart area or the railroad area?
To include the railroad.
To the railroad area.
To the railroad.
Well, at that point, it almost has to go to Houston Hart because the railroad's half of a block right from there. So I think the issue is that currently a lot of that area is industrial, and so consequently, that would be the decision maker that it's industrial, but I'll let John explain it in further detail.
I'll give you the short answer is there were a lot of the owners of those industrial properties that were opposed. And after discussion with the Planning Commission, we felt like that wasn't necessary, that wasn't the core area that we were looking at for this sort of protection. So maybe that's an area we could expand it to into the future. But we basically wanted to, and the Planning Commission wanted to exclude those properties that were opposed. And most of those were those industrial properties in that area, north of that line. So right in there. And so, again, as
Can be done, and as we see
Right.
further development and activity, we can at some point add that to it so it doesn't prevent it from being added at some future time, and particularly if property owners would like it to be included, they can come forward and work with John James and it could be extended.
I just wanted to clarify one point that he made also. He mentioned that as long as it's just a day process, the day-long process is just the like for like, if you're doing the same thing. Items that have to go to the Design and Historic Review Commission could take a month or 6 weeks because depending on when the next DHRC meeting is.
Okay. Any further public comment? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, none opposed, motion passes 7-0. We will go to item E, which is first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2021, and ending September 30th, 2022 for capital items and projects.
Thank you, Mayor. Tina Deersky, Director of Finance. I have for you this morning your annual budget amendment for carryovers, which includes projects that were either in progress or planned at year end but didn't quite get encumbered so that it could carry over automatically. So the first one we have for you this morning is for facilities maintenance. They're requesting to carry over $65,000 for the City Hall building's HVAC units and for security upgrades at City Hall. Traffic operations is requesting to carry over $70,818 for the flashing yellow arrow project. Street and Bridge is requesting to carry over the remaining maintenance funds for streets of $1.7 million. Parks is requesting to carry over $10,000 to remove dead trees at Santa Fe Park. Police is requesting $8,000 for backup and replication software, $68.95 for Axon body camera fleet kit with license, and then two more, $15,000 and $10,000 for body armor.
And these are all carryovers.
Yes, ma'am. Fire is requesting $10,133 for vehicles and accessories to those vehicles, and then an ambulance purchase in the amount of $178,268. Parks is carrying over $308,000 in change for riverbank stabilization. The airport is requesting $52,922 for fleet upgrades. They are planning to replace an old truck out there, and $500,000 for the security system out there. The cameras are needing to be upgraded. They're pretty outdated out there. Solid Waste is requesting $100,000 for a building to house the new emergency operations trailer that was purchased last year. Stormwater is requesting to carry over $108,000 for Sunset Lake. Civic Events, $20,000 for a point-of-sale system for their concessions. And then the Sports Complex is requesting $6,358, for a new storage building. And that's all of the carryovers. This next one is just a regular budget amendment where Development Corporation had agreed to fund the GTE hangar code study in the amount of $20,680.
Are there any questions, or if not, may I have a motion for
So moved.
approval? Tommy made a
Second.
motion, seconded by Tom. Any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed,
Thank you,
motion
Mayor.
passes 7-0. We will now go into closed session, executive session of the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to a requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property regarding 15,002 square feet of land out of and a part of Lot 8, 9, and 13, Block D, Village of San Angelo, also known as Main Part, City of San Angelo, Tom Green County, Texas, as per plat recorded in Volume B, page 271, Deed Records of Tom Green County, Texas. We are now adjourned for the closed session.
Oh, thank
We will call this meeting back to order at 10, no, let's see, what time is it? 10:32. Sorry, 10:32 a.m. The meeting is back in order. There are no announcements from the closed session. So I'll move into item 8, follow-up and administrative issues. Consideration and possible action regarding items discussed in the closed session if necessary. Are there any? None, as we said. Then item B, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Are there any? With none, may I have a motion for adjournment?
If I may,
Yes.
I would love to make the motion for adjournment.
You can do that. It's yours. By Lane and a second by Lucy. Any public comment?
Okay.
None? Take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. We officially are
Miss you.
dismissed at 10:33 a.m.
I have requested
Mr. Groves with the camera right out here, so let's take
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Let's go, Councilman Lane
Good
Carter.
idea.